All right, guys, welcome back. So I just gave you the instructions on how to do your line art project. But now we're going to talk about a little bit more about lines and a little bit more about color, because you might want to include specific colors in that project based on how you feel on the topic that you chose. So we looked at those paintings a few minutes ago, and I've seen some of them in person. So that's me. I'm about 5'4". And I showed you that painting a few minutes ago where they had the slowly drooping kind of diagonal lines in there. And it's super impressive in person, one, because it's so big, okay? And you really can kind of just feel the movement of the paint. And they even wrap it around to the edge of the canvas so it continues that movement. So super more impressive in person than it is just to look at it in a photograph. Then I've also seen this one in person with all the crazy little lines everywhere. And there are lines everywhere in this painting. Here's some close-ups. There's little chickens in there. There's backs of horses. There's lizards. There's snails. There's all kinds of little lines and details going on in this one painting, okay? And one of my favorites, when I just showed you the Matisse painting of his friend who ended up becoming a nun, but he wanted to marry her. And so he's super frustrated by her. So all kinds of zigzag lines and stuff in here telling of that frustration. So when you abstract something, you're just taking the essence of that object. You're taking it down to its just bare essence and feelings about it, and not the object itself. I used to hate abstract art. I didn't understand it. I was like, that is just a bunch of shapes and lines. It makes no sense whatsoever. But when I really started to learn about what the lines mean and the colors mean, it makes more sense. And I can appreciate it now, okay? So this one, they took a cow and then they took it down to its bare form. Okay, so each time they abstracted it a little more. This one is like a farmer and a cow in the horizon, and they abstracted it out. Could you ever guess what this is? A lot of people think it's a helicopter. Some people think it's a spider or a bug. But actually, it is an abstraction of a steam engine that the artist used to watch go by every afternoon in his backyard when he was a young child. So yeah, I never would have gotten that one either. What about this one? Kind of makes it feel, you can tell there's a lot of movement, a lot of zigzag lines, a lot of diagonal lines. Okay, so it's a railway crossing. And this one is a fire in the evening. So you have your one warm spot right here in the middle, and then the rest of the area around it. I know, kind of weird, right? So your abstract line assignment, you're going to pick an activity. You're going to list about 5 adjectives, how you feel about that activity, decide which lines reflect that. Put those in there, make an interesting composition about your choice, okay? Of course, if we were here, I'd make you use 3 media and all that kind of stuff, but just use what you have at home. Any piece of paper, any crayons, whatever you have at home is fine. And then abstract it out. Don't draw the activity itself, just how you feel about it, okay? All right, so let's talk about color, because you might want to pick some certain colors to be in it, because colors mean something too. So colors, there are 7 principal colors in the visible spectrum of human eyes. So whoever went to 2nd grade that day, you learned what? Roy G. Biv, okay? So if you ever forget how many colors are in the spectrum, all I have to do is count the colors in Roy G. Biv, okay, there's 7, and you will know. So there are 3 physical properties of color: hue, value, and intensity. So let's talk about hue. Hue is just another word for color. It's synonymous with the word color. Red's a hue, yellow's a hue, blue is a hue. Mixing one color with another color changes its hue, okay? There used to be a commercial on for Ziploc one time before they invented the zippers at the top, and they had one yellow strip and one blue strip, and they were like, yellow and blue make green, okay? So you would push them together and then it would be green, and you know the Ziploc bag was closed. So mixing colors make different colors. So primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. So with your colors at home, there's a little color wheel on your notes. I want you to color the top circle red, the next skip a circle and color it blue, and then yellow. So they're called primary colors because they cannot be produced by combining any other colors. All other colors can be produced by mixing just these three primary colors together. So red at the top, skip one, blue, skip one, yellow. Okay, these are your primary colors. If you watch Sesame Street, I'm sure they taught you your three primary colors, and you can color them in here at the bottom. So a mixture of two primary colors produces a secondary color. Yellow and blue, as the Ziploc commercial told us, make green. Red and yellow make orange. Blue and red make violet or purple. Those are synonymous. So on your color wheel, between the red and blue, color that purple or violet. Between the yellow and blue, color it green. And between the yellow and red, color that orange. Okay, these are the secondary colors. Primary, red, blue, and yellow. Secondary, purple or violet, green, and orange. So when you mix a primary color and a secondary color, you get a tertiary color. That's not a word you use every day. A tertiary color. That just means a third type of color or intermediate color. So if I mix violet and red together, I get red violet. If I mix blue and violet together, I get blue violet. Do you notice anything odd about how we name those tertiary colors? What color always comes first? The primary color. So whatever primary color I mix with secondary color, I'm going to say that primary name first. So if you did a huge color wheel and you put in your tertiary colors, you would have that primary color coming first in the tertiary color name. Alright, so hues. Hues containing a common color, although in different proportions, are known as analogous hues or monochromatic. So a lot of guys like this look, and I like it okay. I usually like complementary colors better. But if you wear the blue tie with the blue shirt and, you know, darker pants, whatever, then that's like a monochromatic look, okay? Hues directly opposite each other in the color wheel, which is my favorite pattern, are the most contrasting, and they're called complementary colors. And a lot of schools pick their colors based on being complementary colors. So LSU, purple, what's the complementary color? Yellow, okay? West Side, blue, complementary color, orange. Christmas, blue, yeah, green and red, okay? They're complementary colors. So on your color wheel down there, after we filled in those notes with the big color wheels, I want you to color in the, let's see, what are we going to do first? We'll do the complementary colors first. So color in yellow and purple. They're complementary colors. You can see they're opposite each other on the color wheel. Next to that one, you see the little box next to the color wheel. Color in three colors that are right next to each other, any three that you want. Those are analogous colors. So if they're analogous, they're touching each other. Yellow, yellow-green, green. So does Walker have an analogous color scheme or a complementary color scheme? Well, Walker's colors are green and yellow, unofficially. Officially, they're green and white. But green and yellow. So they're analogous colors. But Westside has a complementary color scheme, orange and blue. All right, so flip the page. Let's talk about values. Values. Now, remember all those value words we learned in first semester? Intrinsic, extrinsic, subjective, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, I told you the word value is used for a lot of things in art. Now we're talking about lights and darks. So value here is the relative lightness or darkness of an image. So see that 10-point scale right at the top of your next page where it says black in the last box and white in the first box. I want you to take your pencil and color it as dark as you can in that last box and then lighten it up as you go all the way down the scale. And that is your value scale. So it goes from the whitest white to the darkest darks. This is how you show shadows and highlights in an image. Okay, so underneath that, there's two circles, and I put a sphere in the middle. I want you to change those circles into spheres. An object's value is a function of the amount of light reflected from its surface. So I want you to pick where the light's coming in. Just pretend, okay? And then leave a highlight there. And then as you go across your circle, get a little darker until you have the darkest at the very bottom diagonally across. So light, then more shadow, and then cast a shadow. And when you want to shade a sphere, when you're shading that sphere, you want to shade in a circular type pattern. Because if you shade in a curve, it'll look like a curve. But if you shade up and down, it's not going to look like a curve. It's going to look flat. So if you want to give it that three-dimensional look, you're going to shade in that curved pattern. Okay, so you can just give it a shot. Try to make them look like a sphere. So don't say, if you were in class, I'd be like, don't say your answer out loud. Just look at this next slide. So based on values, tell me what you see. So how many of you see a young lady? And then how many of you see an old lady? Okay, so if you see the young lady, you see that this is her eyelashes right here and her nose, and she's wearing a hat with a feather, and here's her hair and her ear, and that's her chin, and then she has a neck with a necklace on, and then that's her jacket or whatever she has on. But if you see an old lady, this is her nose, that's her mouth, here's her chin, here's her eyes. Oh, interesting, huh? So just based on using values and lights and darks, this artist created two images in one. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? All right, so different types of shading. There's all kind of different types of shading. We're just going to learn a few. This one's called cross-hatching. It just kind of suggests a shade or where light's reflected on an object, gradually transitioning between light and dark. It just creates that illusion of depth. So you kind of shade up and down and across, and it's not super detailed. It's not supposed to be super detailed. It's just to give you that hint of illusion of depth. So you can tell that there's darker parts of the apple right here because it goes together and the shading gets real tight, and then you can tell the lighter parts where the shading gets real loose. So practice that on your paper with your apple that I gave you there. It's not as easy as it looks. Actually, for me, it's harder to do the illusion, kind of just this kind of shading, the looseness, than it is to do super realistic. Because my brain doesn't like to do the looseness of stuff, the whimsical stuff. It likes super realistic. But you can try it. It's kind of fun. All right, next one. Intensity, also known as saturation, refers to the brightness or dullness of a color. So if I add black or white to a color, it changes its intensity. So if I add white to red, you get lighter shades of red. And if I add, and ended up almost a pink color, right? And then if I add black, I get darker shades of red and end up with a maroon color. Okay, so if I want to change the saturation, I add white. If I want to change it darker, I add black. Expressiveness of color. So colors, just like lines, produce different feelings. So according to color theory, warm colors convey a feeling of happiness, which I somewhat disagree a little bit. And cool colors convey a feeling of sadness. That's why we always ask, why are you feeling so blue today? That's where that comes from, because blue conveys sadness. But I disagree a little bit. I kind of feel like when I'm angry, I see red in my head. So I don't always agree with that. But yellow I do think of as happiness. I think of sunshine. So it kind of all depends on you too. So red is associated with extravagance, like roll out the red carpet. Okay, that's why they put the red carpet out on like Oscar night. Green's associated with envy. Has your grandmother or anybody ever called you the green-eyed monster? That means you're being jealous of other people. Violets associated with royalty, luxury, and wealth. The most expensive fabric back in Jesus' time was purple, because they had used natural berries and stuff to dye fabrics back then, and those type of berries were very rare back then. So only royalty had purple fabric. So it's kind of stuck with that association today. Why do we wear white wedding dresses? Because it's associated with purity. Now this is just within our culture, right? Other cultures feel differently about different colors. In Indian culture, they wear red for weddings and white to funerals. So it's all very subjective. All right, so shapes also mean different things. Regular shapes are geometric and have specific names like circles and squares. And then irregular shapes are called biomorphic shapes. So you have your geometric shapes, and then you have your biomorphic, kind of weird, amoeba-looking stuff, shapes, okay? And bio means life, so that, life is all weird shapes. Expressive quality of shapes. Squares symbolizes reliability, stability, and symmetry. Rectangles. Too much rectangularity can symbolize dullness or monotony. So if you were doing your project on school and you thought school was monotonous, though you kind of miss this now, don't you? Ha ha ha. See, I told you would miss me one day. Then you might want to include a rectangle in your thing. Circles. What do you think circles symbolize? Do they have a beginning or an end? No. So they're considered divine shapes for temples and early churches and a symbol of eternity. No beginning and no end. So where have you heard a circle described like that? If you've been to a bunch of weddings, they always describe the wedding rings as a circle having no beginning and no end, and that they symbolize love and an eternal nature. And then there's triangles. An upright equilateral triangle symbolizes spirit, Father, Son, Holy Ghost kind of thing. Can symbolize fire, life, prosperity, and harmony. So all kinds of things. So in your project, you might want to include these shapes based on how you feel about the object that you chose. All right, guys. See you later. Just do a little bit every day. Love you. Bye.